former President Donald Trump says he expects to be arrested and indicted again, this time by a federal inquiry into the Capitol riots and efforts to overturn the 2020 election. Trump posted on his Truth Social platform that it was a scam and a hoax, saying deranged Jack Smith, the prosecutor with Joe Biden's DOJ, sent a letter stating that I'm a target of the January 6th grand jury investigation and giving me a very short 4 days to report to the grand jury, which almost always means an arrest and indictment. Well, former Arkansas Governor Asa Hutchinson, who is running against Trump for the Republican nomination, has called for him to suspend his campaign, saying anyone who truly loves this country and is willing to put the country over themselves would suspend their campaign for President of the United States immediately. It is disappointing that Donald Trump refuses to do so. And Asa Hutchinson joins me now. Welcome to you, Governor. It does seem quite extraordinary, I have to say, particularly now I've come back over this side of the pond, having been in America last week. People are incredulous here that a presidential candidate already facing serious criminal charges is now potentially about to face yet more in an attempt to thwart the result of a democratic election, and could potentially after that face another raft in relation to phone calls he made in Georgia. How is this happening?
Well, first of all, it's not a happy day for America. This is not a good representation of our democracy. And how did it happen? It happened because of Donald Trump's irresponsibility and potential criminal conduct. I've said all along that he was morally responsible for January 6th and what happened in the attack of the Capitol. But now Jack Smith, the special prosecutor, is through the grand jury saying he's criminally responsible as well. That has to be tested through the courts. But my point is that this is an incredible distraction from all the issues that we face as a nation. It's a distraction from the campaign. It's a distraction to Donald Trump. And if you put your country first, then you just step aside, because this is too much for the country and for him and for everyone to deal with during this critical time in our country. And that's what, I've been a federal prosecutor. I know what's at stake here when you've got 2 pending indictments and you got another one that's coming. This is not going to be a pretty sight for the next 6 months.
Here's the problem, I think, that you have certainly as a Republican candidate, but that America also has, I guess, democratically, which is that Trump, each time he gets indicted, simply goes on the attack, and he's doing it again here before he's actually been formally indicted, but it's almost certain that he will be. You know, he basically turns it into a political thing. He says that it's a third indictment, and it's the arrest of Joe Biden's #1 political opponent, i.e. himself, who is largely dominating him in the race for the presidency. Well, he's way ahead in the polls, and each time one of these things happens, Trump's popularity in the polls seems to go up, not down, which is also extraordinary. What can you, as a Republican candidate trying to make him suspend his campaign, which I don't think he will for a moment, what can you do to stop the Trump machine from just barreling through all this, given that his own supporters, his own base, simply don't seem to care?
Well, you're right, Pierce, that he's very likely to go up in the polls, get a bump from this because of the indictment, and there's a perception that this is politically motivated in some way. And, of course, who drives that? That's driven by Donald Trump. And what's happening here is that he's not talking about the facts. He's talking about the politics of it. And so, you know, if this is going to change voters' thinking, it's going to be over the course of time when they realize that the Republican Party can't win with Donald Trump as the nominee with all of these external pressures. You can't attract independents. You can't attract suburban voters. So we're going to lose. And so that has to be absorbed. And then secondly, the seriousness of the allegations. I can't speak to the January 6th because I don't know what he's going to charge. But whenever you look at the mishandling of classified information, these are our nation's secrets. And for a former president to use those with entertainment value, these are important facts. And whether they're brought out in terms of the court case, I'll certainly be bringing them out in terms of the campaign because they're relevant. What kind of commander-in-chief are we going to have?
You, as you say, were a federal prosecutor. When you saw what was laid out in the charges, just for the documents alone, obviously the Stormy Daniels thing I think is a smaller affair legally, but the stolen documents, when you read the charge sheet there, how serious do you think it is and how likely is it that he could be convicted?
Well, those charges are as serious as they get in the criminal case context. Jack Smith laid out the facts very clearly. I recognize that there's always a different side of this that's presented in court, but it doesn't get any more serious, particularly for someone who wants to be our commander-in-chief again. There's a presumption of innocence. It's going to be tried in court, but this is serious, and the allegations on January 6th are serious. Now, they're particularly serious on the body politic, the entire voting base. The Republican Party needs to wake up and say, we can't have someone who opposes a peaceful transfer of power under our democracy. And that's exactly what happened. And the question that Jack Smith has got to prove, did he know that at the time he summoned everyone to the Capitol and wanted them to oppose the transfer of power, which caused them to march on the Capitol? What did he know at that time?
Again, what I would say, though, here is the problem politically, is it doesn't stop him if he's indicted multiple times from running as a candidate. The Constitution allows that. It doesn't stop him even if he's convicted. Even if he's sent to prison, Donald Trump could continue to not only run as a candidate, actually be president. Now, it would be completely unprecedented, but most things Trumpian are. So look, you're currently polling at 1% yourself in the race. He's over 50% in many of the polls. He's so far ahead of everybody. All these indictments seem to do, as I say, seem to help him. They seem to pump up his numbers. Kevin McCarthy was saying that today. I just don't know how you can stop him winning the nomination. And he would then think, Trump, I know him very well, in a two-horse race against Joe Biden, who looks like he's barely functioning and we're still 18 months away from an election, he'd have a very good chance of winning.
Well, that's the only hope that Joe Biden would have, would be if Donald Trump is on the other side, indicted, not being able to pull independent votes. And that was what we had in 2020 when he wasn't under indictment, and he lost. He lost that race, and a lot's happened since then. You ask what's going to change it. I don't know. But I know that as a candidate who cares about this country, you don't sit on the sideline when our democracy's at stake, whenever our country's at stake. I'm engaged in this fight. We got 6 months before the Iowa caucuses, and I know that Iowa's looking at this and potentially looking for an alternative. The other candidates were in mostly single digits. It's going to be who surfaces out of that and who takes on Trump straight on. And I think you've got to do that if you're running for president in the Republican primary.
There are two clips I want to play. One is Donald Trump when he talked about what he could get away with because of his popularity. And he talked about shooting someone on Fifth Avenue. Let's take a look.
They say, I have the most loyal people. Did you ever see that? Where I could stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody and I wouldn't lose any voters, okay? It's like incredible.
Now, he was presumably joking, but actually, he's probably right now. It would look like he could almost certainly do what he said there, and it wouldn't move the needle at all. Secondly, I want to play a clip. This is of you being booed at the Turning Point Action Conference yesterday. Let's take a look at this. So the two things there. One, I think he's reached that point where he can basically do what he likes and his base isn't going to, we'll just listen to his explanation and believe it. But secondly, for you as a conservative, a long-time Republican who really cares about his party and his country, to get that kind of response at a conservative event, how did you feel about that? And what does that tell you about where the party now is?
Well, on the first clip that you played, what that tells you about Donald Trump is that he's full of arrogance. I think everybody knows that. And whenever I think about public service, I think more about humility and serving the public versus serving your own interest. The second clip that you played was me speaking really at a pro-Trump gathering. And I go to that audience because I know they're not all aligned with me by any means, but I make the case of a conservative vision for America and where we need to go. You've got to reach out to those audiences. Thank goodness there were a lot of young people there, thousands of them, who were very interested, despite some bad leadership and behavior on the part of some of the adults in the room.
If Donald Trump is watching this, he probably is, what would you say to him?
Well, I would say step aside for the good of the country. You're not going to be able to successfully win. You know that, just like you knew that you lost in 2020. So think this through. I hope that you'll make that decision and drop out for the good of the country.
You know the problem, Asa Hutchinson, is that that's exactly what so many people told him in 2016. I remember. Everyone said, you haven't got a chance, drop out. And he just barreled on and he won the presidency. And I'm sure part of him's thinking, if Biden's the opponent, I've got every chance.
Good point. And that's why if you're going to win the nomination, it's got to go through Donald Trump. We got to take it in the debates. We got to take it on the campaign trail and win.
Governor, great to talk to you. Thanks for appearing on the show. I appreciate it.